Elena pulled her hood tighter around her face, blending into the crowd of the bustling marketplace. The gray, overcast sky mirrored the somber mood of the city. She moved swiftly, her heart pounding, as she navigated the narrow alleys leading to the old, abandoned warehouse. Every step was calculated. She couldn't afford to draw attention to herself. The warehouse stood at the edge of the city, a relic of the past before the environmental collapse. Its crumbling walls and broken windows provided a perfect cover for the secret meetings of the resistance. Elena glanced around, ensuring she wasn't followed, before slipping through a hidden side entrance. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit by a few flickering lanterns. Shadows danced on the walls as a small group of people huddled together, their faces tense but determined. Liam, the former government agent turned informant, stood at the center, briefing the group on their next move. Elena took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Liam," she called softly. "What do we have today?" Liam's sharp eyes met hers, and he nodded. "Elena, we're planning to infiltrate the central surveillance hub. We need to disable the mainframe that controls the city's monitoring systems." A murmur of unease rippled through the group. The central hub was heavily guarded, and failure could mean capture or worse. Elena's resolve hardened. "What do we need to do?" she asked, her voice steady. Liam gestured to a detailed map spread out on a makeshift table. "We've identified a weak point in their security," he explained. "Dr. Isaac, who once worked for the government, has provided us with the schematics. We have a small window of opportunity when the guards change shifts." Elena studied the map, her mind racing with possibilities. "I'll go," she said firmly. "We can't afford any mistakes." The group fell silent, the weight of the mission sinking in. Liam nodded again, his respect for Elena evident. "All right," he said. "We'll go over the plan in detail." Hours passed as they meticulously planned their approach. Every angle, every potential obstacle was discussed. By the time they finished, the group felt a mix of anxiety and determination. This mission could change everything. As night fell, Elena and a small team of resistance fighters made their way to the edge of the city. The rain had started again, a soft drizzle that masked their movements. They moved through the tall grass, the sound of the rain covering their approach. Elena reached the perimeter of the central hub, a towering structure bristling with antennas and cameras. She took a deep breath, her fingers brushing against the cold metal of the fence. "Let's do this," she whispered. Using the cover of darkness, they approached the security gate. Elena knelt beside the control panel, her fingers deftly working to bypass the security codes. Sparks flew as she cut through the wires, the system beeping in protest before falling silent. The gate creaked open, and the team slipped inside. The interior of the hub was a maze of corridors and surveillance rooms. Elena led the way, her heart pounding with each step. They reached the mainframe room, its door secured with a biometric lock. "Dr. Isaac's code," Liam whispered, handing her a small device. Elena pressed the device against the scanner, holding her breath. The door clicked open, revealing the mainframe, an imposing structure filled with blinking lights and humming machinery. Elena approached the control panel, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She input the shutdown sequence, her eyes flicking between the screen and the door. Any moment, they could be discovered. "Come on," she muttered, watching the progress bar inch forward. Finally, with a soft beep, the system began to shut down. The surveillance feeds flickered and died, the hum of machinery slowly fading. "Mission accomplished," Liam said, a rare smile crossing his face. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. An alarm blared, red lights flashing as guards poured into the corridor. "Go! Go!" Elena shouted, grabbing the device and sprinting towards the exit. The team followed, their footsteps echoing through the halls. They burst out into the night, the rain now a torrential downpour. They ran through the darkness, the sound of pursuing guards growing fainter. Reaching the edge of the city, they ducked into the safety of the alleys. Elena paused, catching her breath, and looked at Liam. "We did it," she said, a sense of hope stirring within her. Liam nodded, his expression serious. "This is just the beginning," he replied. "But tonight, we took a step towards freedom." The rain had finally stopped by the time Elena and her team reached the safe house. It was a small, inconspicuous building on the outskirts of the city, hidden among the ruins of what once was a vibrant neighborhood. Inside, the atmosphere was tense yet hopeful. The team had succeeded in their mission, but they knew the government's response would be swift and brutal. Elena slumped into a chair, exhaustion seeping into her bones. Liam approached her, his face lined with concern. "You did well tonight," he said quietly, handing her a cup of water. "Thanks," Elena replied, taking a sip. "But we can't stop here. The government will come after us with everything they've got." Liam nodded. "We need to lay low for a while, regroup and plan our next move. Dr. Isaac is already working on the next phase." As if on cue, the door to the back room creaked open, and Dr. Isaac emerged, looking haggard but determined. "We bought ourselves some time," he said, joining them at the table. "But we need to move quickly. Disabling the surveillance system was just the first step. We need to dismantle their entire network." Elena leaned forward, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "What's the plan?" Dr. Isaac spread out a new set of schematics on the table. "The central hub controls the surveillance, but the real power lies in the government's data center. It's where they store all the information they collect. If we can infiltrate that and destroy their data, we'll cripple their ability to control the population." A murmur of apprehension rippled through the group. The data center was even more heavily guarded than the surveillance hub. It was a fortress of security measures and armed guards. Elena felt a knot form in her stomach. This mission would be far more dangerous. "We'll need a distraction," Liam said, his mind already working on a plan. "Something big enough to draw their attention away from the data center." Elena nodded. "And we'll need more people. We can't do this alone." Dr. Isaac looked at her, a glint of determination in his eyes. "I've been in contact with other resistance cells. They're ready to join us. We just need to coordinate our efforts." As they continued to plan, Elena couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. Every step they took brought them closer to freedom, but also closer to the edge of a precipice. One misstep, and everything could come crashing down. Over the next few days, the safe house buzzed with activity. Resistance fighters from different cells arrived, bringing with them supplies, weapons, and crucially, hope. The plan was set in motion, each detail meticulously crafted to ensure success. On the night of the operation, Elena stood at the edge of the safe house, looking out into the darkness. The city lay silent, an eerie calm before the storm. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Liam approached her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We can do this," he said. "We've come this far. We can't turn back now." Elena nodded, drawing strength from his confidence. "Let's go," she said, her voice steady. The team moved through the city like shadows, slipping through alleys and back streets to avoid detection. They reached their positions, each group ready to play their part in the intricate dance of distraction and infiltration. Elena's group approached the data center, a monolithic structure that loomed ominously against the night sky. The entrance was heavily guarded, as expected. Elena signaled to her team, and they split into two groups. One would create a diversion, drawing the guards away, while the other, led by Elena, would slip inside. As the diversion team launched their attack, the air was filled with the sounds of explosions and gunfire. Guards rushed to respond, leaving the entrance vulnerable. Elena and her group moved swiftly, disabling the security systems and entering the building. Inside, the data center was a labyrinth of corridors and server rooms. Elena led the way, her heart pounding as they navigated the maze. They reached the main server room, a vast space filled with rows of blinking servers. Dr. Isaac moved to the control panel, his fingers flying over the keys. "We need to upload the virus," he said, his voice tense. "It will corrupt their data and bring the system down." Elena stood guard, her eyes scanning the room for any signs of danger. Minutes felt like hours as Dr. Isaac worked, the tension mounting with each passing second. Finally, he looked up, a triumphant smile on his face. "It's done." But their victory was short-lived. Alarms blared, and the room was flooded with red light. "They found us," Liam shouted, drawing his weapon. The team formed a defensive perimeter, preparing for the inevitable onslaught. Elena's mind raced as she looked for a way out. They had achieved their objective, but now they needed to escape. "This way," she called, leading them towards a service exit. They fought their way through the building, the sounds of conflict echoing around them. As they burst out into the night, they were met with a wall of armed guards. Elena's heart sank, but she refused to give up. "Keep moving," she shouted, firing at the guards. The team pushed forward, determination and desperation driving them. They reached the edge of the compound, where a getaway vehicle awaited. As they piled into the vehicle, Elena looked back at the burning data center. They had struck a blow against the government, but the fight was far from over. She knew that the road ahead would be long and treacherous, but she was ready to face whatever came next. With a final glance at the chaos behind them, Elena turned her gaze forward. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. And with every step, they moved closer to freedom. The safe house was bustling with activity as resistance fighters from various cells gathered. The successful infiltration of the data center had bolstered their ranks, and hope flickered in the eyes of those who had long suffered under the oppressive regime. Elena stood at a makeshift command center, poring over maps and data feeds with Liam and Dr. Isaac. They were planning their next move, knowing that the government would not take the destruction of their data center lightly. "We need to strike again before they can fully recover," Elena said, tracing a route on the map with her finger. "The power grid is our next target. If we can disrupt their energy supply, we can cripple their ability to maintain control." Liam nodded. "Agreed. But we'll need to coordinate with all the resistance cells. This has to be a synchronized attack." Dr. Isaac leaned forward, his face etched with concern. "I've been working on a device that can create an electromagnetic pulse. If deployed at key points in the power grid, it could cause a blackout across the city." Elena's eyes widened. "That could give us the advantage we need. How soon can it be ready?" "A few days," Isaac replied. "But we'll need to gather some additional components." "Then let's not waste any time," Elena said, turning to Liam. "Mobilize the teams. We need to prepare for the next phase." As the preparations began, Elena took a moment to reflect. The resistance was growing stronger, but so were the dangers. She knew that each step they took brought them closer to a tipping point. The government's response would be swift and merciless. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the safe house, Elena found a quiet corner to compose her thoughts. She pulled out a worn photograph from her pocket, gazing at the faces of her family. They had been taken from her by the very regime she now fought against. The memory of their loss fueled her resolve. "We're ready," Liam said, approaching her. "The teams are in position." Elena nodded, tucking the photograph back into her pocket. "Let's bring them down," she replied, determination in her voice. The night was shrouded in silence as the resistance fighters moved into position. The city lay under a blanket of darkness, unaware of the storm about to be unleashed. Elena's team approached the main power station, its imposing structure looming against the starless sky. They reached the perimeter, where Dr. Isaac began setting up the EMP device. "This will take a few minutes," he said, his hands steady as he worked. Elena and Liam kept watch, their eyes scanning for any signs of patrols. The tension was palpable, every second stretching into an eternity. Finally, Isaac stepped back, a look of satisfaction on his face. "It's ready." Elena gave the signal, and the resistance fighters moved to their positions around the city, ready to activate the EMP devices simultaneously. The countdown began, each second bringing them closer to the moment of truth. "Now," Elena whispered, and the devices were triggered. A wave of electromagnetic energy pulsed through the air, and the city plunged into darkness. The power grid was down, and the government's control was severely crippled. "Let's move!" Elena shouted, leading her team away from the power station. They had to reach the rendezvous point before the government forces could regroup. As they navigated the darkened streets, the sense of accomplishment was tempered by the knowledge that this was just one battle in a long war. Elena's thoughts were interrupted by the distant sounds of sirens and gunfire. The government was already responding. They reached the rendezvous point, where the other resistance fighters were waiting. The safe house was now a hive of activity, filled with the buzz of strategy and the hum of determination. "We did it," Liam said, a rare smile crossing his face. "But we can't let our guard down." Elena nodded. "This is just the beginning. We have to keep pushing, keep fighting. We won't stop until we've reclaimed our freedom." As the resistance fighters regrouped and planned the next steps, Elena felt a sense of unity and purpose. They were no longer just individuals fighting a faceless enemy. They were a force, a movement. And they would stop at nothing to bring down the regime. The gathering storm was just a prelude to a revolution that would change their world forever. The safe house buzzed with energy as the resistance fighters gathered, their ranks swelling with new recruits inspired by their recent successes. Elena stood at the center of the activity, coordinating efforts and ensuring everyone knew their roles. The power grid attack had been a significant blow to the government, but they all knew it was only a matter of time before the regime struck back. Liam approached Elena, his expression serious. "We need to fortify our defenses and prepare for a counterattack. Intelligence reports indicate that the government is planning a major offensive." Elena nodded. "Agreed. We'll need to strengthen our positions and secure more resources." "Have you heard from Dr. Isaac?" "He's in the lab, working on a new device that could give us an edge," Liam replied. "He said it's almost ready." Elena made her way to the makeshift lab at the back of the safe house. Dr. Isaac was hunched over a workbench, surrounded by an array of tools and electronic components. He looked up as she entered, his eyes tired but determined. "How's it coming along?" Elena asked, stepping closer to inspect his progress. Isaac wiped his brow and nodded. "Almost there. This device will disrupt their communications, making it harder for them to coordinate their forces. But we need to test it in the field." Elena considered this for a moment. "We can organize a small team to deploy it. If it works, it could buy us valuable time." Isaac handed her a small, cylindrical device. "Be careful with this. It's powerful but delicate." Elena took the device and returned to the main room, where Liam was briefing the fighters on their defensive strategies. "I need a volunteer team to deploy a new device," she announced. "It could give us the upper hand in the coming battle." Several hands shot up, but Elena selected a group of seasoned fighters who had proven their skills in previous missions. "Stay sharp and stay safe," she told them. "Our survival depends on this." As the team set out, Elena focused on preparing the safe house for the imminent attack. Barricades were reinforced, and weapons were distributed. The air was thick with anticipation and resolve. Night fell, casting long shadows over the city. Elena stood on the rooftop, looking out over the darkened streets. She felt a mixture of fear and determination. The government's retaliation would be swift and brutal, but the resistance was ready. Suddenly, a distant explosion rocked the ground, followed by the unmistakable sound of gunfire. The attack had begun. Elena hurried downstairs, rallying the fighters and ensuring everyone was in position. The safe house erupted into chaos as government forces stormed their defenses. Elena fought alongside her comrades, her movements precise and deadly. The clash of metal and the crack of gunfire filled the air, punctuated by the shouts and cries of those fighting for their lives. Amidst the turmoil, Liam appeared at her side, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. "They're coming in from the east. We need to hold them off." Elena nodded, leading a group of fighters to reinforce the eastern barricade. The fighting was intense, and she could feel the strain in every muscle. But they held their ground, refusing to let the government forces break through. Hours seemed like minutes as the battle raged on. Just when it seemed like the tide might turn against them, a brilliant flash of light lit up the sky. The device had been activated, and the government's communications were thrown into disarray. The attackers faltered, their coordination lost. Seizing the opportunity, the resistance fighters pushed back with renewed vigor. Elena moved through the chaos, her mind focused on one goal, victory. Finally, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the government forces began to retreat. Breathless and battered, Elena stood among her comrades, the taste of victory tempered by the loss of fallen friends. Liam approached her, a weary smile on his face. "We did it," he said. "We held them off." Elena nodded, her eyes scanning the battlefield. This is just the beginning. We need to regroup and plan our next move. The fight isn't over. As the resistance fighters tended to their wounded and reinforced their defenses, Elena knew that the battle for freedom would be long and arduous. But with each victory, they grew stronger, more united in their cause. The heart of the resistance beat with a fierce determination, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And as the sun rose on a new day, Elena felt a renewed sense of hope. They were not just surviving, they were fighting for a future where freedom and justice would prevail. The victory at the safe house had bolstered the resistance's morale, but Elena knew they couldn't afford to become complacent. The government's retreat was temporary, a regrouping before their next assault. The resistance needed to stay one step ahead. Elena convened a meeting in the command center. The room was filled with the core members of the resistance, their faces reflecting a mixture of exhaustion and determination. Liam, Dr. Isaac, and several cell leaders gathered around the central table, which was covered with maps and tactical plans. We need to keep the pressure on them, Elena began. We have to disrupt their operations and hit them where it hurts the most. Our next target is their main supply depot. If we can cut off their resources, it will cripple their ability to launch another offensive. Liam nodded. We've gathered intelligence on the depot's location and defenses. It's heavily guarded, but we have a plan to infiltrate and sabotage their supplies. Dr. Isaac stepped forward, holding a small device. This is a more advanced version of the EMP. It can temporarily disable their security systems and create a window for us to strike. Elena took the device, feeling the weight of their hope and trust in her hands. We'll need a skilled team for this mission. Volunteers? Several hands shot up, but Elena chose a group of seasoned fighters who had proven their loyalty and skill. We'll move at dusk, she said. Everyone, prepare for the mission. This could be our most important strike yet. As the fighters dispersed to make preparations, Elena felt a nagging sense of unease. Something didn't feel right, but she couldn't pinpoint the source of her anxiety. She shook off the feeling and focused on the task at hand. Dusk fell, and the infiltration team gathered at the edge of the city, ready to move out. The depot loomed in the distance, a fortress of supplies and munitions. Elena led the way, her senses heightened, every nerve on edge. Using the cover of darkness, they approached the perimeter. Elena signaled for Dr. Isaac to deploy the EMP. The device hummed softly, then emitted a pulse of energy that disrupted the security systems. The guards, momentarily disoriented, failed to notice the team's entry. Inside, the depot was a maze of crates and containers. Elena and her team moved swiftly, planting explosives and setting charges. The mission was going smoothly, too smoothly. As they reached the central warehouse, a sense of dread washed over Elena. She glanced around, searching for anything out of place. Her instincts screamed at her to retreat, but they were so close to achieving their goal. Set the final charges and let's get out of here, she ordered, her voice tense. Just as they finished, an alarm blared. Elena's heart sank. It was a trap. Government soldiers poured into the depot, weapons drawn. The team was surrounded. Elena raised her hands, signaling for her team to do the same. We have to surrender, she said quietly. We can't win this fight. As they were herded into a holding area, Elena noticed a familiar face among the soldiers, an old friend, Mark, who had disappeared months ago. Their eyes met, and Mark's expression was a mix of regret and determination. Elena, he said, stepping forward. I'm sorry, but I had no choice. Betrayal, Elena whispered, the word bitter on her tongue. Why, Mark? He shook his head. They have my family. I had to do it to save them. Elena's heart ached with the weight of his words. She understood his reasons, but the betrayal still stung. We trusted you, she said. You were one of us. Mark's face hardened. I didn't have a choice. But you do. Tell me where the rest of the resistance is, and I'll make sure you're treated fairly. Elena's eyes blazed with defiance. I'll never betray them. The soldiers took them away, separating the team and locking them in cells. Elena sat alone in the darkness, her mind racing. They had been so close to a major victory, but now they were prisoners. Hours passed, and the cell door creaked open. Dr. Isaac was shoved inside, his face bruised and bleeding. He looked at Elena, a spark of hope in his eyes. "They didn't get the full location of the resistance," he whispered. "We still have a chance." Elena nodded, her resolve hardening. "We need to find a way out of here. The fight isn't over." As they plotted their escape, Elena couldn't help but think about Mark and his betrayal. It was a harsh reminder of the sacrifices and choices they all had to make. But despite the setbacks, the resistance would continue to fight. Their spirit was unbroken, and their determination unwavering. The echo of betrayal would only make them stronger, more united in their quest for freedom. And as long as there was a spark of hope, they would never stop fighting for a better future. Elena sat in the dimly lit cell, her mind racing with thoughts of escape and retribution. The betrayal by Mark had stung deeply, but it also ignited a fiercer determination within her. The resistance's cause was more vital than ever, and they couldn't afford to falter now. Dr. Isaac, nursing his wounds, whispered urgently, "We need to find a way to communicate with the others. If we can get a message out, they'll come for us." Elena nodded, her eyes scanning the cell for any possible means of escape. "There has to be a way. They haven't broken us yet." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Elena and Isaac exchanged a tense glance as the cell door creaked open. A guard stepped inside, followed by Mark, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "Elena," Mark began, his voice low, "I'm giving you a chance to escape. I can't undo what I've done, but I can help you now." Elena's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why should we trust you?" "Because I know where they're keeping the others," Mark replied. "And because I want to make things right." After a moment of tense silence, Elena nodded. "All right, but if you betray us again, there will be no forgiveness." Mark unlocked their cell and led them through the winding corridors of the facility. Guards were sparse, most likely deployed to the front lines in response to the resistance's actions. They moved swiftly and silently, Mark leading them to a secure communications room. "Use this," Mark said, handing Elena a small device. "It'll send a coded message to the resistance. Tell them where you are and that you need extraction." Elena took the device, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She quickly input the coordinates and sent the message, hoping their allies would receive it in time. "We need to get to the holding cells," Mark said urgently. "That's where they're keeping the rest of your team." As they made their way through the facility, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into another trap. But she had no choice but to trust Mark for now. They reached the holding cells, where her team was locked up, looking battered but determined. "Liam, Isaac, let's get everyone out of here," Elena called softly as she unlocked the cells. Her team members emerged, their faces lighting up with hope and determination. As they moved towards the exit, the alarm system blared to life. "We've been discovered," Isaac said, his voice tight with urgency. "Keep moving," Elena ordered. "We can't stop now." They fought their way through the facility, the sounds of gunfire and shouts echoing through the corridors. Elena led the charge, her resolve unbreakable. They burst out into the night, where the resistance extraction team was already engaging the guards. "Over here!" Elena shouted, waving to the extraction team. The resistance fighters provided cover fire as Elena and her team sprinted towards the waiting vehicles. They piled in, and the vehicles sped away, leaving the facility behind in flames. As they drove back to the safe house, Elena glanced at Mark. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You did the right thing." Mark nodded, his face etched with relief and regret. "I'll do whatever it takes to help from now on." Back at the safe house, the atmosphere was a mixture of relief and anticipation. The resistance had survived another battle, but the war was far from over. Elena gathered her core team, including Liam, Isaac, and Mark, to plan their next move. "We need to strike at the heart of their operations," Elena said, her voice resolute. "We need to take down their command center." Liam nodded. "It's risky, but it's our best shot at crippling their control." Dr. Isaac leaned forward, a spark of determination in his eyes. "I have something that might help." A prototype weapon I've been working on. It could turn the tide in our favor. Elena's gaze swept over her team, their faces filled with a mixture of exhaustion and unwavering resolve. Then let's prepare. The next strike will be our most decisive yet. As they finalized their plans, Elena felt a renewed sense of purpose. The resistance was stronger, more united, and more determined than ever. They were the rising phoenix, ready to reclaim their freedom from the ashes of oppression. The safe house was alive with preparations. Resistance fighters moved with purpose, gathering supplies, checking weapons, and discussing strategies. The air was charged with a mix of excitement and tension as they prepared for their most ambitious mission yet, an assault on the government's command center. Elena stood at the center of the activity, coordinating with Liam, Dr. Isaac, and Mark. The success of this mission depended on precise timing and flawless execution. "We need to divide into 3 teams," Elena said, pointing to the map spread out on the table. "Team A will create a diversion at the main gates. Team B will infiltrate from the west side and disable the security systems. Team C, led by me, will go straight for the command center." Liam nodded. "We'll need to move fast. Once the diversion starts, they'll be on high alert." Dr. Isaac handed Elena a small device. "This is the prototype weapon. It's an EMP grenade that can disable electronic systems within a 50-meter radius. Use it wisely." Elena took the device, feeling the weight of their hopes and fears in her hand. "Thank you, Isaac. This could be the key to our success." Mark stepped forward, his expression determined. "I'll lead Team B. I know the layout of the command center better than anyone." Elena met his gaze, seeing the resolve in his eyes. "All right. Let's do this." As night fell, the resistance fighters gathered at their designated positions around the command center. The imposing structure loomed against the dark sky, a symbol of the regime's power and control. Elena felt a surge of adrenaline as she readied herself for the fight ahead. "Remember, we move on my signal," she said into her comm unit. "Team A, are you in position?" "Affirmative," came the reply. "Ready to create the diversion." "Team B?" "In position," Mark's voice crackled through the comm, ready to move. "Team C, let's do this," Elena said, leading her team towards the eastern entrance. The night was still and silent, the calm before the storm. Then, a series of explosions rocked the ground as Team A initiated the diversion. Alarms blared, and guards rushed towards the main gates, leaving the other entrances vulnerable. "Team B, go!" Elena commanded. Mark and his team moved swiftly, infiltrating the west side and disabling the security systems. Elena's team advanced, taking out any remaining guards and making their way towards the heart of the command center. Inside, the corridors were a maze of sterile, white walls and blinding lights. Elena led the way, her heart pounding in her chest. They reached the central control room, where the regime's top officials coordinated their operations. Elena signaled for her team to hold their positions. She pulled out the EMP grenade, her fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "This is for everyone who suffered under your rule," she whispered, activating the device and tossing it into the room. The grenade detonated with a blinding flash, and the control room was plunged into chaos. Screens flickered and died, and the officials shouted in confusion and panic. Elena and her team stormed the room, securing the area and taking the officials into custody. "Command center secured," Elena reported into her comm unit. "Team B, how are you holding up?" "We've disabled their backup systems," Mark replied. "They're blind and defenseless." Elena allowed herself a moment of relief. "Team A, fall back and regroup." "We've done it." As the resistance fighters regrouped, the realization of their victory began to sink in. They had struck a decisive blow against the regime, crippling their ability to control the population. Elena stood in the control room, looking at the defeated officials. "This is just the beginning," she said. "The people will rise, and we will reclaim our freedom." Liam approached her, a rare smile on his face. "You did it, Elena." "We all did." Elena nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "We need to broadcast a message to the people. Let them know that the regime's control has been broken." Dr. Isaac worked quickly to restore power to the communication systems. Within minutes, Elena was standing before a camera, ready to address the people. "Citizens of our great city," she began, her voice steady and strong. "Tonight, we have taken a stand against tyranny. The regime's control has been shattered, and we are free to rebuild our society. Join us in this fight for a better future. Together, we can create a world where freedom and justice prevail." The message was broadcasted across the city, reaching every corner of the population. Cheers and cries of triumph echoed through the streets as the people realized that the tide had turned in their favor. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Elena stood with her comrades, their faces filled with hope and determination. The battle was far from over, but they had taken a significant step towards reclaiming their freedom. The rising phoenix had spread its wings, ready to soar towards a brighter future. The sun rose over the city, casting a golden hue over the streets that were now filled with jubilant citizens. The regime's hold had been broken, and the people were beginning to taste the freedom they had long yearned for. Elena stood on the balcony of the command center, looking out at the sea of faces below. It was a sight she had dreamed of for so long, and now it was finally a reality. Liam joined her, a rare look of contentment on his face. "We did it, Elena. We gave them hope." Elena nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "This is just the beginning. We have a lot of work to do to rebuild and ensure this freedom lasts." Dr. Isaac approached them, holding a stack of papers. "I've been working on plans for a new governance structure. Something that involves the people and ensures no single entity can ever hold so much power again." Elena took the papers, scanning through them. "This is good, Isaac. We need to involve the community leaders and get their input. This new era has to be built on trust and cooperation." As they discussed the next steps, a messenger arrived, breathless and excited. "Elena, Liam, you need to see this." They followed the messenger to the main square, where a large screen displayed messages from resistance cells across the country. The successful takeover of the command center had sparked a wave of uprisings, and people were rising against the regime in every city. "We've inspired them," Liam said, his voice filled with awe. "This is the spark that will ignite the revolution nationwide." Elena smiled, feeling a sense of unity and purpose she had never felt before. "We need to support them, coordinate our efforts to ensure they succeed. This is our chance to bring down the regime once and for all." Over the next few days, the command center became a hub of activity. Communication lines buzzed with updates from different regions, and supplies were sent to support the uprisings. Elena and her team worked tirelessly, coordinating strategies and providing guidance to ensure the resistance's success. One evening, as Elena reviewed the latest reports, Mark approached her, a look of determination on his face. "Elena, I want to be part of the effort to liberate the other cities. I need to make up for my betrayal." Elena studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I believe in second chances, Mark. You've proven your loyalty. Go and help our comrades. They need leaders like you." Mark's eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Elena. I won't let you down." As Mark left to join the efforts in another city, Elena felt a sense of closure. Betrayal had shaken them, but redemption and unity had brought them back together. Weeks passed, and the tide of revolution swept across the country. The regime's forces crumbled under the weight of the people's determination. City by city, region by region, freedom was reclaimed. Finally, the day came when the last stronghold of the regime fell. The capital city was liberated, and the leaders of the regime were captured. The streets erupted in celebration, the air filled with the sounds of joy and triumph. Elena stood at the forefront of the celebrations, her heart full of pride and hope. She addressed the crowd, her voice carrying the weight of their shared struggle and victory. "Today, we stand as free people," she declared. "We have fought and sacrificed for this moment, and now it is our responsibility to build a future worthy of our struggle. Together, we will create a society where freedom, justice, and equality prevail." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices united in a chorus of hope and determination. Elena looked at her comrades, Liam, Isaac, and the countless others who had fought by her side. They had achieved the impossible, and now they stood at the dawn of a new era. As the celebrations continued, Elena took a moment to herself, reflecting on their journey. The battles they had fought, the sacrifices they had made, and the unity they had forged had brought them to this moment. The rising phoenix had soared, and now it was time to build a future where it could continue to fly free. With renewed determination, Elena joined the celebrations, ready to embrace the challenges and opportunities of the new era. The fight for freedom was never truly over, but with the strength and unity of the people, they were ready to face whatever came next.